So, the third and final book in the Nevermore trilogy is going to be released on November 3rd, 2015. In ways, it feels like a long time has passed since I started this project. In other ways, not so long. The Nevermore trilogy is a dark fantasy retelling or reinvention of Peter Pan. It started out with the second book, Forsaken Dreamscape, which I originally wrote as a sort of dark fantasy sequel to Peter Pan, but I've always felt that it was more than that. It had a life of its own. The characters were more than what they had been in the children's story, and that made it so much easier and made it seem so much more natural for me to transition from the world of Neverland to the world of Nevermore. By the way, it's not misspelled. It's actually Nevermore without the E, like Mordor. When I started with book one, the first thing I did was to think of what stuck out in my mind about the legend of Peter Pan, just the very idea of the story and what I'd always loved about it, the characters, the setting, all the world elements. And then I had to decide what I would do with those things, what I would keep and build on, what I would get rid of, and what I would create for myself. I still wanted it to be my own story, but I wanted to capture the essence of the tale everyone knew so that fans could still see what they wanted to see in it, but at the same time, they would get a completely different experience. And let me clarify, by fans, what I mean is kids that have grown up. I know we're not supposed to do that, but so once that happens and we start to see things in different ways and we want to explore more adult themes, I've always thought, why can't our stories just grow up with us? And they can, but it takes a little more to impress us now. It takes a little more than a thimble disguised as a kiss to win us over, more than a pirate with a hook to scare us. Now, that idea has carried on through the first two Nevermore books, starting mildly with the first one, but certainly evident and getting a bit more intense in book two with more monsters and certainly more violent happenings. My characters are older, starting out in their mid-teens and then progressing to their early 20s. Peter Pan had an obvious age theme, and I wanted to bring this out in a new way, to focus on an age that was more relatable for the tone of the story I wanted to present, but still able to hold true to the original idea. So instead of the characters being obvious children, they are now, Ren especially, sort of on the verge of the choice to grow up, more mentally than physically perhaps, and the factors that are threatening to make them so are a bit more complex than a happy thought and a sprinkling of pixie dust. The first two books have painted a world of literal dreams and nightmares that can be changed and altered by the whims of its creator. We've seen it be an ideal and a horror, witnessed it being corrupted and cleansed. And now, here we are in book three. Writing Shadow Sun was a slow process. I had actually started making plans for it before I finished book one and started writing it well before I was done with book two, and even missed my original deadline of February because it simply would not write itself. It absolutely refused. I'm not sure that I even knew what it would turn out to be. I just started writing little pieces and then weaving those together, and finally there was a book. Shadow Sun is finished, and I'm happy. I'm very excited to share it, and I'm excited to think that I've completed this journey, and now, of course, I can start another.